We're back. Look, Chris, 4 weeks into the college football season already, man. The board, man, it looks different than it did in August, but that's the beauty of Devy, everyone. Things change fast, and value, it doesn't wait around. So today, we're running a first round of a Superflex rookie mock as if the season ended right now. Not projecting out, right? We're not guessing what could happen, just taking the performances. We're going to take the data, the momentum that we've seen, and we're putting it in a draft order. If you've been wondering what your 2026 rookie picks hold in value, then this is the show for you. So welcome back to the Devy Dojo. I'm your host, the Devy Sensei, and alongside me, as always, is my partner, Chris, the Shifu. But before we dive in, do us a favor, hit that like button right now, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and drop a comment on who you would take with your top pick. So without further ado, Shifu on vacation, I kick it to you.
Yes, sir. I am back at the beach house as I was exactly 2 months ago when we recorded. And it's my last day here, but I've been on island time. I've been enjoying it. We're fighting through a little bit of technical battles. I don't think the internet's as strong here as it needs to be, but we're gonna push through. So hopefully I don't cut in and out too much. But yeah, I'm hoping that all of our fans and listeners and everybody enjoying the game of Devy has been making some trades, because I have seen a lot of trades in both Dynasty and Devy lately, and there's been a lot of things changing. The landscape changes quickly for all formats. There's a lot of panic going on because of the NFL season starting. There's a lot of risers and fallers in the Devy landscape, and we're just here today to project right now what we're looking at from a first round point of view in 2026. And we did a nice little back and forth mock draft where you took the odds, I took the evens, and we got that laid out for you guys here today. So some surprises, I think, of people that landed in our first round, and some maybe some misses that didn't quite make the cut for us. So we're looking forward to diving into that and talking about that with you.
Yeah, for sure, man. If you even just go back to late July, early August, when we were running all those mocks, this looks so much different, man. So this was already just even us going in the back and forth talking about these guys. It was so much fun. And I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm ready to just hop in. Let's get this thing rolling. Let's start off with the first pick.
That's what we're here for, man. All right. Without further ado, as I mentioned, you had the first pick, and you selected Mr. John Mateer at the 101. Let's walk through that. Naturally, Superflex is what we were doing here. Superflex seems to be the dominant Dynasty format these days, so I don't think you'd see any quarterbacks going 101 if you weren't playing Superflex. But he is certainly one of the biggest risers so far in the college football season.
Yeah, definitely one of the biggest risers in Devy and in draft boards, obviously through this first quarter of the season. Now, today, we're recording on Tuesday, September 23rd. Today, we did get the unfortunate news that he broke a bone in his throwing hand, right? Unfortunately, he does have to get surgery. He's going to miss roughly 3 to 4 weeks. So that is disappointing, but still locked and loaded because we're treating this as if the season ended today. And if the season ended today, then there's no other choice than John Mateer simply. He's got over 1,200 passing yards. He's really done it all, Chris. He's been so impressive with his arm. If you go back to the quarterback episode, the color belt tier rankings that we did with him, I had him ranked. I was pretty bullish on him from the beginning because of the off platform and different angles that he can throw with. And, you know, we said going to the SEC was going to be the big litmus test for him. And man, he has not disappointed. He had a big win against Michigan the other day, and then obviously battled against Auburn. They said that he actually broke the bone in his hand in the first quarter of Auburn. And of course, we know he just kept continuing to fight. He had the big fourth quarter, that drive towards the end of the game to really put it away. He had the rushing touchdown. And that's really been the biggest thing that we've seen with him. Last year, we've talked about it ad nauseum. He had over 1,000 rushing yards when you take away the sacks, and he had 15 rushing touchdowns. Already on this season, and he's already got 5 rushing touchdowns in just these 4 games. So, I mean, been incredible with the legs. And of course, when you're playing fantasy in these Superflex formats, the king, like the gold, the fantasy gold there are these Konami code quarterbacks, or even somebody that just offers some rushing utility, right? And that's what John Mateer is going to be able to offer you. So, projecting forward, obviously, I think he's going to be fine. It is disappointing that he's not able to play, but man, just such an exciting player, dude. So I was curious, what were your thoughts on that? Did I take him a little too high, or do you think that's right where he should go?
Too high for me, but that's okay. I get it. He's the current highest valued quarterback, I think, for a lot of people in this class coming up because of the way he's played, and he's always been one of your guys, right? So, as you said, he's got that Konami code upside. He's a missed tackles forced machine. He's absolutely a threat on his feet. For me, I think there's only one quarterback in this draft class that I'm willing to take at 101 as it stands right now, and that would be LaNorris. And obviously, I didn't take him at 102, as we'll find here in a minute. We'll talk about him in a minute. But when I'm looking at the overall talent, the overall prospect profile, the overall current state of things from a statistical standpoint, I think there's only one quarterback that I'd be willing to take a 101 draft pick and use, and that would be LaNorris. However, this guy, John Mateer, is currently the one that is probably going to go the highest in drafts as things stand today. So if he gets high draft capital, if he ends up being the 101, I don't know that he's going to be a consensus 101 Dynasty Superflex pick. But I think he'll definitely be a more consensus higher pick than like a Cam Ward was last year. So he's totally got the wheels. He's got the absolute maniac cannon where he's throwing from all those different arm angles. I know he's one of your guys. I'm not mad at the pick, but I don't think personally I would be willing to take him with a 101 if you put a gun to my head.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, he definitely has his questions in his profile, right? I think the size is obviously the biggest one. Contrasting it with your guy there, LaNorris Sellers, who's built like a tank already. If I had to guess, I would say, if I had to guess, Chris, I would say that you would probably pick LaNorris due to the rushing utility, right? And my only pushback on that would, my only pushback on that, Chris, would be John Mateer's rushed for more yards than LaNorris Sellers has this year. And more
exactly. And like I said, we're going to talk about LaNorris here in a little bit, but John's got the stats that are proving what he can do right now. And, from the quarterback position, we can't always expect. It's harder, I think, to translate those things to the NFL level when you're talking about collegiate defenses and collegiate talent levels that he's playing against. So I'm just trying to project out, and projecting out, I see a little bit more rushing upside from LaNorris. I've seen, an NFL GM take a risk on Anthony Richardson, which obviously is the biggest comp everybody always lays out for LaNorris. And I'm more willing, I think, to go that route because of what I think their overall upside is at the NFL level. That being said, John Mateer would absolutely be on the first round of my mock draft right now. So I didn't have the opportunity to place him anywhere because you took him at 101, but I would have taken him definitely in the back half of this draft for sure.
For sure. All right, let's move on to your pick at 102.
102, I picked Jonah Coleman, which might be a little bit bullish, but right now there's really only one running back in college that's doing it all and doing enough for me to say that's the guy, that's the running back one in the class. And that's Jonah Coleman. He's literally just doing it all. We talked about him on our running back tiers earlier in the off season. We've talked about him ad nauseum in our Discord and all over the place, Twitter, wherever, and on this podcast. And I think that he currently has the least amount of holes in his profile. He's a little bit limited. You're going to find other years there's still running backs that are going super high in Dynasty first round. So he is the guy I'm projecting to be right now the first running back taken in the NFL draft. I don't know that we have anybody right now that might project as a first round running back talent, but I could see him being the first one off the board pretty early on day 2 because he's just doing it all, man. I think he's had 2 games so far this year with 100 yards catching already. He's an absolute lightning rod when they get the ball in his hands, and every play it seems like is a highlight reel waiting to happen. So for me, everything I've seen of Jonah right now makes him my RB1 in this class. And we've kind of had those conversations back and forth early in the season. And now that we've gone through several weeks of the season, I'm ready to say at this point in time, which is the premise of the episode, that's my guy right there. He's the RB1 in the class. I saw Ray GQ was tweeting recently that there's only 3 running backs that can be in that conversation. It's him, it's Jeremiah Love, and it's Justice Haynes. And I tend to agree with that. You know, my boy Nick Singleton, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, has not really stood out so far this year. And I still like his talent level. I still think he's going to have a role to play in the NFL. But when you're talking about what they're doing with the ball right now, Jonah Coleman is undoubtedly, in my eyes, the number 1 running back in college football.
Yeah, you laid it out perfectly, Chris. He's added this element to his game. I mean, he's always been able to catch screens and dump offs. At 236 pounds last year, he was hurdling dudes on screens. So he's always had that ability. But him now cutting weight, going from 236 to 222 pounds, 8% body fat. He got his body right, man. And he's got that added burst now. And you really saw it in this last game where he did go over 100 yards receiving. And listen, if you were paying attention over the course of the offseason, all the beat reporters there on 247 were saying Washington really wants to make him a part of the passing game, really just completely unlock that entirely new element to his game. And it's been so fun to watch. Like, he's always been shiftier than you would anticipate from a back his size. You know, I think we called him a bulldozer with ballerina feet. And now at this new weight that he's playing with, he just looks incredible out there, man. You talked about it. He's got 16 missed tackles on 51 rushing attempts, 13 runs of 10 plus yards with long of 38. He's got an 88 receiving grade from PFF. So he's doing it all. The only knock in his game is he's like a willing blocker, but he's not the best pass blocker out there. But, you know, that's something that you can work on over time. So I'm more than happy with this. I still think I would hesitate to put him above some of the other guys. But the premise of this show, like you said, is as of right now. And as of right now, he's the best. I mean, him and probably Ahmad Hardy, but Ahmad Hardy's not eligible for this draft. So definitely would take him here. No problems. I love it.
Yeah, I got real confused for a minute. We're doing a mock with the Devy Royale guys right now, and Ahmad Hardy's name was on the list of players. And I was like, am I blacking out here for a minute? Because it was the second round. And I'm like, why is he on there?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to take him if he's available, but I don't think, and then I had to double check. I'm like, am I losing it? He was only a freshman last year, right? And then I checked. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. I thought for a minute the transfer thing freaked my brain out. But yeah, Ahmad Hardy would undoubtedly be on the probably top 3 picks of this draft if he was eligible.
For sure.
Because he's having a hell of a year, but he's not eligible for this draft. So Jonah Coleman, it is locking him in at 102.
For sure. Let's move on to number 3 here. This was my choice here. And look, I'm taking the consensus wide receiver 1 off the board in Jordyn Tyson here. And it's no surprise to me that he's become that consensus guy. He's a guy that, again, we've been very high on for a while here. And he's the one receiver in this class that I think can beat you at all 3 levels. He can truly just do it all. And look, I think an underrated aspect of his game is the contested catch ability. He's already winning at a 60% clip on contested catches. He's just savvy, he's balanced, and he's explosive when the moment calls for it. I think back to the last game that they just played, right? You had Sam Levitt rolling out of the pocket, escaping pressure. He did like a little jump pass. Tyson catches along the sideline, makes a nice hands catch, evades the defender. He hurdles a dude over to get into the end zone. Dude's just a dog, man. And I think the rest of like draft Twitter is finally catching up to who Jordyn Tyson is. And like, oh man, look at this guy. And I'm going, yeah, man, he's been incredible. He's just so reliable. He does it all. Of course, the question is always going to be, can he stay healthy? And I know in this last game, he kind of got banged up a little bit. He had to go to the sidelines for a little bit. He just landed a little awkwardly on the shoulder, but he came back in and he played. So that's really good to see. I've been struggling with the comp for him, Chris. I don't know who to compare him to. I thought maybe Chris Olave. I don't know, but he's Jordyn Tyson, man. He's incredible. He's pretty much locked and loaded as a first round.
Yeah, I feel like we could nail something better than Olave, but yeah, he's been. You're much better at comps, and I've been trying to up my comp game to get on your level. And when I'm talking about comps, I'm talking about just comparing players to other players. You compare people to bulldozers with ballerina feet, and things like that. So I got to really, really up my that end of the comp game. But yeah, I don't know. Olabi kinda, but I think Jordyn Tyson is undoubtedly the wide receiver one in this class right now. He's just been so much fun to watch this season. Even in fall camp when we did our fall camp previews, he was making some awesome, awesome catches just in camp, and he's translated that over into the early part of the season. He's got the size. He's 6'2". He's going to be a great feature on an NFL offense, and he's almost assuredly going to be the first wide receiver taken in dynasty drafts, barring anything insane. So great pick at 103. I considered him at 102. I think any of these top 3 picks would have been a fine place to take him, honestly.
Yeah, he's running a 2.51 yards per route run. Chris, I know that's that's just a sexy number right there, man. So love
Absolutely.
to see that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stats. All right, next up, 104, we have Jeremiah Love. And as I mentioned, he was one of the other 3 guys Ray GQ was talking about being the RB1 in this class. And honestly, we haven't seen the usage out of him that we have wanted so far this season. I think that prior to the season, he probably would have been 101 if you had done a mock. And I know you did several mocks. I don't know where he went in any of those. Maybe you can enlighten me. But earlier on in the year, I think you wouldn't have said, oh yeah, Jeremiah Love's going to fall to 104 in a 2026 mock draft. But he still has all of the talent that's there. It's just he also is sharing the backfield with a pretty darn good running back in Jadarian Price. So the way that Notre Dame's season has gone has not been one where they have the luxury of being able to run out the clock or ice any games with their running game, right? So they've been playing more from behind and more panicked all season. And I think that's kind of led to him not getting the usage that we would have expected out of him so far. But he's still one of the most complete backs in this draft class. He's still probably the highest receiving upside of any of these running backs in the class. Just a guy you want to get the ball in his hands. And I think that the stats might not quite be there what we expected, but the NFL draft scouts aren't going to let that affect him because he's got all of the tools that we're looking for in a running back in the modern day NFL. I've compared him before to Darren McFadden. I think that still stands. He's like when you're talking about Madden, I haven't played Madden in many years, but I remember McFadden used to have the shoe with the wings on it under his feet. That's basically Jeremiah Love, right? You want to get the ball in his hands, try to get him in open space and let him do his thing. So for me to grab him at 104 in this mock, I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be super happy. I think going back, referencing those mocks that we did, he was always kind of falling around this top 4 range, but he was always the number 1 running back taken. I think that's the difference now is you could probably point to that weird week 1 usage that he had, and you're like, what's going on here? But obviously they got it figured out. Week 1, they were having CJ Carr, run quarterback powers encounters like he was Riley Leonard. And that was something that we had always highlighted in the offseason was that Notre Dame was really going to have to figure out how they were going to implement that 1,000 yards rushing that they were missing from Riley Leonard. And it looks like they figured it out, and they've given it to another talented back in Jadarian Price, who he's a hell of a back in his own right. But now you've started to see that over the last couple of weeks after the bye, they've upped his usage, right? He's starting to carry the ball more, which you love to see. Currently on the season, Chris, he's sitting at 5.5 yards per carry on 52 rushing attempts, nearly 200 yards after contact, and already 9 runs of over 10 plus yards. So he's showing you that explosiveness that you'd love to see in a running back. I'm always going to take swings on these guys with that spike week potential, right? He's a guy that is a threat to take it to the house on every single carry. We've seen that numerous times throughout his career at Notre Dame. And so you can already just project him going forward in the NFL. He's going to be one of those guys, right? So at 104, to me, I think that's tremendous value. You've seen him slide a little bit, I guess, in terms of value, but not enough. And I think this is just an excellent spot to take him. I do fully anticipate his receiving numbers to go up. I've personally been really impressed with CJ Carr. I think it's unfortunate for Notre Dame that they had to start their season off against Miami and then Texas A&M, 2 quality opponents with a freshman quarterback there. So a little unfortunate for them, but I think they're going to get it together. And I'm hoping that they still make the college football playoffs because I want to see Jeremiah Love taking one to the house like he did against Indiana last season.
Absolutely. Yeah. Their backfield right now reminds me a little bit of Ohio State's last year, where they have just two quality running backs, and, Jeremiah Love being more of the Travion Henderson aspect of that backfield. Just as you mentioned, a total lightning rod. So I expect some big plays to come as the season progresses. I don't think, right now might be the lowest his stock will be until he makes it to the NFL draft. So it might be a good time to strike. I'm going to remove that overlay too. Going to 105, you picked a guy I have previously flag planted as a hater on. However, I've started to relent a little bit. If you watched our mini-sode, I talked about him being a great riser, and you picked Dante Moore. Walk us through that one.
He's another one that I had spotlighted too in our quarterback color belt tier rankings. I was really bullish on him, Chris, over the course of the offseason, just because he was finally getting his real opportunity again. He was somebody that, coming in as a freshman, we know he went to UCLA in order to start right away. And look, sometimes, Chris, when you get baptized by fire, like he did as a true freshman, you get burned. And he got burned pretty bad. You could see it was pretty evident early on that he just lost his confidence. They had to pull him. I think he made the mature decision and transferred out of that program, and he went back to Oregon. And look, in this Will Stein offense, with Dante Moore being able to sit a year behind Dylan Gabriel, soak up the offense, learn from the mistakes that he made as a true freshman. I think you've just seen a mature quarterback now. And look, on the season, he's already at 962 yards, 11 touchdowns with 1 interception. The biggest thing that I like about him, Chris, he's completing 70% of his passes. He's got an 87.6 passing grade, and he's throwing 10.1 yards per attempt. 22 pressures, and he's only been sacked once. That's what I love to see. If I could see a quarterback escaping pressure and getting the ball out on time, those are translatable traits to the next level. That's something that you always want to see your young quarterbacks doing. Now, of course, the big test for him is going to be against Penn State coming up this week. It's one of the banger matchups that I'm going to be highlighting this week in our upcoming Substack article. Probably should have talked about that soon. We're going to be dropping that very soon. And this is a matchup that I'm really looking forward to. I want to see if he's able to continue and carry on this momentum. Because as it stands right now, Chris, with the quarterbacks that we've seen and that we projected to be at the top and how they've fallen, he's a guy that obviously has risen, and he has a legitimate chance to be one of these top quarterbacks taken in 2026. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup. It's going to be him versus Drew Aller. I want to see who wants it more. That we just got to go see it now. He's got all the weapons. He's got Kenyon Sadiq to throw to. He's got the freshman phenom in Decorian Moore, who I really liked their connection. I hadn't really watched a lot of Oregon this year, just some highlight clips because the games themselves were blowouts. But I really watched this last game. And Dante Moore was doing an incredible job of throwing these fades to the outside to Decorian Moore. Their connection just looks out of this world right now. So just super, super excited to see how that translates now against these better opponents.
Yeah, that D Moore to D Moore connection is a fun one to watch for sure. And I don't have too much to add. I made the entire mini-so Dante's Inferno, and I talked about how he has shut me up pretty quickly. I'm just really liking what I'm seeing out of him, man. The tape's all there. The velocity that he just, it's effortless, man. He just whips that thing down the field to those receivers. And I agree that before I completely pull my hater status, I want to see it against better opponents, because you never know. He could crumble, once they start to get into Big Ten play. But right now, man, he's certainly one of the bigger risers in the college football landscape. I just took him. We did a full 5-round Devy mock, and I took him at 302, and I felt like that was pretty good value. I was surprised that he made it through the second round. So if I'm taking a shot on him early in the third round, that's said something about what he's done so far this season. So good pick there at 105 for sure. Next, 106, I did take my boy LaNorris Sellers. I was happy with him as the third quarterback off the board. We've talked about him ad nauseum before, tons of overall talent, intangibles. He's got it all. However, what he doesn't have is the stats so far this season, right? You mentioned his Konami code upside, his rushing ability. And we have really not seen that, nor have we seen a ton of great flashy passing stats so far this season either. So he hasn't had that growth that we would have liked to see this year after a nice long off season of preparing for this, potential coming out into the draft. Who knows? He might not be available in upcoming dynasty drafts. He might decide to go back to school and improve on some things and try to raise his draft stock. That's yet to be determined. If he comes out, though, I think this is a fine place to take him at 106, even if the season ended today. And that's, we're looking at a subpar statistical outcome from him. I still think that the tools are all there for him to be a productive dynasty quarterback for you. We've seen it time and time again where a guy doesn't have to be a fantastic passer, but if they're getting those rushing stats, that's what you want out of your quarterbacks in fantasy because they're going to put up the points. So I think that there's the way we're looking at things now, he's going to get into an offense and not necessarily start right away unless they're absolutely desperate. I think it might benefit him to go to the NFL and sit for a little while. And that doesn't always last long. I mean, today the announcement came through that Jackson Dart is taking over for Russ. And I mean, how about that, dude? Russ just had a 400-yard game and then immediately benched. I mean, there's not much else Russ could do. I know that he didn't have a great showing last week, but whoo boy. So the pressure's always on when there's a freshman quarterback coming in, rookie quarterback, to get him on the field, especially if you're a coach like Dayball trying to save your job. But I think it would benefit LaNorris to be in a scenario like that where he's maybe sitting behind a Russell Wilson type or an Aaron Rodgers type or whatever, one of those veteran guys. Matt Stafford, he might be the next, great veteran with 1 year left to go. Somebody who he can learn from to be a little bit more of an accurate passer and then use his natural ability once he gets on the field to be more of a rushing threat. And he's somebody that the defenses are going to have to game plan around very specifically to make sure that he doesn't burn them just by using those natural talents. And that's why I'm happy to take him at 106. He's still a top 5 Devy quarterback for me. I'm looking forward to him in the NFL. It's just right now his stock has fallen not quite as far as some of the other quarterbacks in college football right now, but his stock has fallen and taken a little bit of a dip. So I used that opportunity to scoop him up here at 106 as the third quarterback off the board.
Yeah, I know that's had to be your easiest pick of this mock because 106 for
sure.
a guy who has the potential to be the top pick in the NFL draft because of those traits that you mentioned. I mean, this is just tremendous value, but I did pass on him, notably twice with 2 other quarterbacks that I selected ahead of him because obviously we're taking into account if the season ended today and he hasn't looked as good as we anticipated. And Chris, I don't know if it's necessarily one of those stat line blunders or if it's truly just he's not hitting the expectations that we had for him. If you remember just a couple months back, there were not even hushed whispers. They were loud proclamations of this is our Heisman candidate. This is the guy that's going to take South Carolina into the playoffs this year. They're going to make a deep run. He's really going to show off that arm. And at times he has, because make no mistake about it, LaNorris Sellers has all the talent in the world. He has all the arm talent in the world. There's a lot to be said about him as a passer. I think it's an underrated aspect of his game. I think he throws with tremendous velocity. I think he's more accurate than people give him credit for, but it's his base and his mechanics within the pocket. They're sound. From what I've been able to see, they're extremely good, and you still see it now. The hesitation that I have with him as a passer is that he simply stands in the pocket too long. He takes too long to get rid of the ball. And that's evidenced by his PFF numbers, which are in the high 3s. It's like 3.2 something. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know it's very high. And because of that, he has a high pressure to sack ratio because he's holding on to the ball, right? They're asking LaNorris to go out there still with his Superman cape and go deliver with probably a suspect offensive line. And then not the best weapons. Like I like Nick Harbor as a projection. I'm rooting for the kid, but he's not necessarily somebody that you want as your wide receiver 1. He's a lot of traits and athleticism, right? And then outside of Nick Harbor, who do they really have? Right now, currently, they have 5 freshmen that travel with the team, and they're rotating him in and out. They're looking for weapons for him, and I think that is partially to blame for the lack of production that we would like to see. Obviously, we haven't seen the rushing numbers that we anticipated. It is still 4 games in, and he really only played 3 because the last game he got a concussion and he had to be pulled out. So numbers are a little skewed in that way. I have no real hesitation going forward. I still project him to be one of those top picks, but I'm not entirely convinced, Chris, that he does declare for 2026 because of everything that we mentioned here. You mentioned Dart, and I have my hesitation with him starting against a really good Chargers defense in this situation that his coach is likely to get fired. This is just how you ruin a young quarterback. And quarterbacks do not develop in the season. Like, you can learn from a quarterback like Russell Wilson. You can learn from those veterans to see how they operate, how they study film, how they prep for a game. But you're not actually developing your skills in the offseason. In the offseason, you're learning the concepts and you're expected to go out and run the plays. Your development is going to happen in the offseason. So I do think that if he still has these question marks, if he's not being told he's a for sure locked in top 5 pick, I do anticipate him to stay in school, make some money on NIL, help South Carolina compete, and then continue development there. And then you have more experience and you're ready to roll, barring major injury. So that's why I passed on him here. I was looking at some guys that I think are a little more ready to enter the NFL right now, as it stands today.
Yeah, and I can't knock you on that, and I completely agree. It's almost like we were happy with him for staying at South Carolina and turning down other NIL deals and money to go to different schools. But that could possibly be part of the detriment right now. As you said, there's not a great supporting cast, and the coaching staff there isn't necessarily as developed as some of the other coaching staffs in the college football landscape in the SEC and things like that. So it could be a tougher road for him. And I would say it's probably more 50-50 now that he stays or goes to the NFL, whereas in the offseason, we were thinking it was probably more likely that he would be going into the draft. So we'll see how the season progresses. If he turns it around and has some great games, we've seen stock rise way late in the season or even after the season's over as, the different bowl games have occurred and the combine and things like that. So we'll see where it ends up for LaNorris, but definitely happy with him at 106. Moving to 107, Justice Haynes. We had mentioned him a little bit already, and I love this pick right here.
I was so excited to make this selection here, Chris, because he's just one of the biggest risers, and you and I have both been on the roller coaster that has been the projection and analysis of one Mr. Justice Haynes. These have been super hard to track down on where he's going, because early reports, if you remember from spring and fall camp, there was people whispering that Justice Haynes was falling behind in the depth chart to his running mate Jordan Marshall, who's a stud in his own right. So the concern was shaping up in my eyes that, man, this is just like Alabama all over again, where he had Jam Miller there and they had a mid-off, right, to see he was the most mid of the running backs there. And I think that now, after 4 games in this season, we could confidently say that the rumors of Justice Haynes' demise were greatly exaggerated. What I love, Chris, is Haynes has already rushed for more yardage this season than he did all of last season. In just 4 games, he's rushed for 537 yards on 66 carries. So that's an 8.1 yards per carry with 6 scores to go along with it. So the tape, the highlights, they all show what the numbers confirm. He's got elite burst, true breakaway speed. We just saw the last highlight touchdown run that he had against Nebraska. Bro, he hit 21 miles per hour on that 75-yard house call. You see it every time he hits the crease. He's another one of those guys, like I talked about with Jeremiah Love, that is a threat to take it to the house on every single play, and I will always chase that upside. He's listed at just 209 pounds, but I swear to God, the dude's bigger. I don't know if it's just a sturdy frame, how he's put together, but he looks bigger than 209 for me. I don't know about you, but I think the only knock in his game that I could really – the only knock that I could see in his profile right now is he doesn't really offer much in terms of a pass catcher. I think he's more than capable to take dump offs and screens and things like that, but they just don't really use him in that way. So that's the only really knock that I have on him, but such a big riser for me, dude. I had him as a yellow belt, and right now he's clawing up to a purple, at least for me. So I think, again, you got to take a chance on these home run hitters. 107. We've got him as RB3 right now, according to this. And I mean, I'm here for it, man. I think based on what we've seen so far in this season, you have to put him up there. And if he continues at this pace with that great Michigan offensive line, man, he could rise even higher. So what are your thoughts there on Justice
Absolutely,
Haynes?
yeah. I completely agree. I think he's probably destined to have maybe not like a full, Kyron Williams type workload at the NFL where somebody's going to get on the field to catch passes like a satellite back that complements him pretty well. But when I've been watching him this year, I think I see a lot of Kenneth Walker in his game where he has that breakaway, any moment it could be to the house kind of situation. And Kenneth Walker's a great running back, right? We've had a lot of debates with our friend Chev recently on Kenneth versus Charbonnet and all that, but maybe not exactly the same build, but reminds me a lot of that type of game where you never know. He might have one or two runs stuffed and then the next one's just completely gone. And it's funny searching his name on Twitter and you just see all the Alabama fans like, why did we let this guy go? Why were we not using him? Why was he a backup running back? And Alabama could certainly use a running back of his caliber this year because they have not done a whole lot of running the ball. So great situation for him to transfer into. You mentioned the roller coaster. Surely it was up and down, but this is exactly what we were looking for way early on in the dojo, and we ranked him on our RB tiers, our belt list. So definitely excited to see what the future holds for him. He's done everything you could possibly ask for from a transfer and finally getting the full share of the workload. So he's staving off Jordan Marshall pretty well, and great pick at 107. He's somebody I had considered at 106, certainly. This whole little section here gets pretty interesting the next half of this draft. So we'll follow that up with a pick that I was a little torn on. I went with Makai Lemon, but I'm a Carnell Tate boy, right? Everybody knows I'm a Carnell Tate boy, but man, when you phrase it like if the season ended today, there's really one wide receiver who has elevated his game much more than the others, and that's Makai Lemon. He is showing off everything that we wanted to see out of him so far this season. Absolutely just doing it all right. The biggest knock on him would be his size, and unfortunately that's something that he can't help. But he's only 5'11", 190. So I think that limits him more to a slot role at the NFL level. But I think he has a future as potentially one of the best slots in the NFL because he's just an absolute precise, clean route runner. He easily identifies holes in zone coverage against those linebackers. It seems like he can just pluck that ball out of the air and just accelerates extremely quickly. Like he's a huge yards after the catch threat on any given play. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here because you're a USC guy, but
Yes, sir.
absolutely has that second gear. He catches the ball, moves quickly upfield, and it seems like if he gets that breakaway opportunity, there's a next level of speed that he's running those routes, and then he just bursts it open with little second gear to get all the way to the end zone or outrun those defenders. So love what I'm seeing out of him so far this year. I think that he's firmly in contention to be a potential round one wide receiver in the upcoming NFL draft class.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I already consider him a locked in round one wide receiver. And I am pretty critical of these guys as Devy assets just because they're my team. I want to make sure that none of my bias is infiltrating my analysis. And I got to say I can confidently say that it's not. This dude is him. Like if you remember going back to our colored belt tier rankings with the wide receivers, I was pretty low on him and I was very critical, citing a lot of the same things that you said with him being relegated to like a slot only role. But this season, Chris, if you look at the alignment splits, he's splitting outside wide a lot more than he has in the past. So they're starting to move him around a bit. He's showing the alignment versatility that NFL scouts are going to love to see. And I don't have this confirmed, but he just looks bigger. I swear he bulked up in the offseason, and you could see it. You talked about him as a threat to run with the ball after the catch, and he's physical with his running. Like he's knocking people over. He's fighting for the extra yards. It's taking two people to take him down, which is something that you didn't always see consistently in his game. And now you are. He's been comped by a lot of Trojan fans to Amon-Ra. And I struggled with that one, but the way he's played this year, man, I completely see it because he is our zone coverage beater. The way he's able to find the pockets in the zone and he just sits. He's a very intelligent runner. When Jaden Mayava has to break away from the pocket and run, he's looking for Makai Lemon, as evidenced in that game against Michigan State, where he was able to break away from the pocket. He ran and he saw Makai Lemon for like a 75-yard touchdown. And speaking of that game, Chris, 9 targets, 9 catches, over 127 yards receiving, like 27 yards per catch. Dude's got just right under five yards per route run currently on the season. So, I mean, dude's been balling. Season ended today. I think he'd be a little higher than the 108 just because of the value installation that you get from the wide receivers, right? We always talk about building your teams through the wide receivers. And I do think that there is a lack of real depth at that position in this draft right now. We got some fun risers, but there's not a lot of depth outside of the top guy in Jordyn Tyson. So I think that this guy gets the draft capital that I'm anticipating and goes to a good landing spot, dude, it's wheels up. I think he could play in any offense right now. He's what I don't want to say he's what Lincoln Riley wanted Zachariah Branch, but he's doing the things that he wanted Zachariah Branch to do. I've talked about it before when he challenged Zachariah Branch to be able to run those option routes, be able to do those a little more things in terms of a nuanced route runner. He wasn't able to do that, and I think we finally have that in Makai Lemon. I think we finally have the guys that fit this scheme, and you're seeing it on the offensive production that we have. So super excited about him, dude. He's got 250 yards after catch already, like in 4 games.
Yeah, he's the man. I have seen the Amon-Ra comps, and I do struggle with that a bit, only because when you're talking about a slot receiver, even if it's a difference between 5'11" and 6 feet, that's a huge difference out of the slot, I think, and even those extra couple of pounds too. But I like where the thought process is coming from, because I do think he has the ceiling as one of the better slot receivers in the NFL. So depending on where he lands and what offense he fits into, he's going to be an immediate producer. I love the floor. I think he's got the safest floor of any wide receiver in this class, and a lot of upside too. Reminds me of a lot of Emeka Egbuka in that way. So I was very happy to take him here at 108, despite the fact that it cost me my boy, Carnell Tate. One final word on Lemon. He is currently PFF's highest rated receiver in the Big Ten. So he's doing all the right things. Very good asset right now to own in Devy. And I'm sure you're happy if you used a second round pick on him in Devy startups this year. And alluded to our boy, Carnell Tate, you just had to twist the knife as I was agonizing over which one I would take. You said, well, I'm scooping him up right next, right after Makai.
Right. I had to, man. Because I think obviously Carnell Tate is probably the consensus wide receiver too. I do still think of him as wide receiver too. And if you're looking at the numbers, right, they're not gaudy. He's only got 219 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. So if your box score is scouting, it doesn't look that great. But when you put on the tape, no, you don't even have to put on the tape. Just watch the broadcast. This dude's doing big time things when the time calls for it. If you go back to week 1 versus Texas, obviously it was a defensive slugfest. There wasn't much offensive fireworks going on. And an underthrown ball by Julian saying he has to come back to it. It's a contested catch. He double catches it for a touchdown that really put the game away. He just comes up big in big spots. Obviously, when you have Jeremiah Smith on the outside, a lot of the coverages are going to be allocated to that end, and it's going to free you up for some real one-on-one matchups. And I think just going forward, when they get into the bigger matchups in the Big Ten, in their conference play against the SEC or in the playoffs, you're going to see him come up big in those moments. I think obviously he's playing that Emeka Egbuka role right now, and I've just said I love it because I love his frame. He's bigger than you would anticipate, because you think of him as like he wins as like a small man, right? He wins with nuanced route running, and he has an added 6'3" frame. So just super, super excited for him. And as you always say, Chris, don't overthink it. Just take the Ohio State wide receivers. They're a proven pipeline into the NFL. And I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah's podcast the other day, and he talked about how scouts are looking at these guys coming from Ohio State, and they're not necessarily looking at the production. They know that these wide receivers coming in the NFL, they're going to be pro ready. They're already ready for the grind of the season. They understand coverages and just all the little nuanced stuff that you need to be a successful pro. These guys are coming in ready and just locked in and ready to roll. So he's going to be a first round pick. Let's just say that right now. He's going to be a first round pick. And with that draft capital at 109, dude, it's another value still. I'm really liking the value here in these later picks in this draft so far. I mean, going from 7, 8, 9, these are guys that I'm over the moon for. So any of these draft slots right now, if you're looking currently to your rookie dynasty picks in 2026 and you're projecting to have like a mid or to late, I think as of right now, the value is right there. I know a lot of people, including us, are saying if you're contending to leverage those picks for contending assets, still advise you to do that. But if you are rebuilding, like there is star power here. So don't get it twisted, right? People are going to get FOMO during the draft. There is value in this draft currently as it stands.
Yeah, it's been so far the NFL season has been a weird one, and that's affected fantasy to where if you thought you were a contender, you might not be starting out the way that you wanted to, or like I had a couple teams that were, productive struggles where I had several first round picks, and I'm ready to start flipping those first round picks to get some guys that can help me keep my early hot start going. But at the same time, I don't want to use them all because you never know what's going to happen if the game adjusts itself a little bit and it goes back to what we thought might have happened. So, maybe if you have one or two first round picks and you don't hesitate, flip them, get some guys that can help you now, but hang on to a few of them because you never know how the season's going to progress. And it definitely feels like this is a great back half of this mock draft that we're doing so far. Which brings us to 110. This was my pick. This might have been the surprising one. I think you were a little surprised when I selected this guy, Germie Bernard. Germie. I always want to say Germie because it looks like Germie, but I think it's Germie. Germie Bernard has been a phenomenal riser so far for me this season. 6'1", 209 pounds. He was a 4-star recruit back when he was recruited to Michigan State. He ended up going to Washington, played with them in 2023, and then transferred with Kalen DeBoer to Alabama, and he was one of their top receivers last year. I think he actually led them in catches last year. I just love watching him play, man. He's just a dog. He seems to have an extremely high football IQ. He's just always finding holes in the coverage, and he's just quick on his feet to get open for his quarterback. I'm sure Ty Simpson loves having him there. I love his route running ability and his ability to go after contested catch situations and come down with the ball. He really just doesn't seem to waste a lot of motion. It seems like he knows as soon as he gets the ball where to turn upfield and start moving. Just very quick on his feet, which leads to a lot of yak ability. I'm really liking what I'm seeing as soon as he makes the catch and how he can maneuver his way. It's like once the catch is made, he's already processing the next steps and he knows where those defenders are. So he's going to make his shiftiness to get around some of those guys and get some added yardage to the end of the catch. Very reliable hands. I think he only had 2 drops all of last season. It seems like he can catch a lot of balls that are a little bit further away from his body. He plays all over the field too. He's inside, he's outside. They used him in the backfield a few times so far this season. We mentioned how they don't seem to have a very good rushing threat right now in their backfield. Of course, they had a sad injury to Jam Miller earlier this offseason too, but they've been using him out of some funky backfield formations as well. He's also a punt and kick returner, and I think that I've even seen some quotes from NFL scouts and GMs saying, yeah, he can do it all, man. Like he's going to be a productive NFL player because he can do anything that you ask of him. And that's what I like when I watch him because it sure does seem like that. If I had any knocks on him, it would be that he doesn't have quite top end speed to be like a legitimate deep threat in the NFL. I think he only runs a 4.52 40. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I think he can be a very good secondary option, in the vein of like a T Higgins or something like that in the NFL, where maybe you already have an alpha, or like a Jordan Addison type. You already have an alpha, but you have a very, very, very good wide receiver too. He actually gives me a lot of Deebo Samuel vibes. Maybe that's just because of the running, but I think he's got a similar body frame. He does the same kinds of things he does, where he can be a slot guy, he can be an outside guy, he could be, running from the backfield. He's all over the field, just doing what it takes to get the ball in his hands and score for his team. And as I mentioned, just seems like a very high intelligence athlete. So one of those guys that probably could have played any other position, if he had the talent for it, lands at wide receiver and does very well there. What are your thoughts on Germie Bernard?
I go back and forth, man. I think this is a little too early for me just because I'm hesitant. I don't think he gets the draft capital. I don't think he's a round 1 guy. I think he's a day 2, like early day 2 guy. Just because he's one of those guys, and you alluded to this, he doesn't necessarily have like that one elite trump card, but he just does everything really well. And because of that, I think that's going to be baked into a lot of his artificial value. To me, not in terms of like play style, but just value. He reminds me of like Jacoby Myers, a guy that's probably going to be valuable for your dynasty teams. He's going to put up points, but when you're trying to trade him, you're not really going to get much interest in him. So I would struggle spending a first round pick on him, barring something crazy on the season, right? If Ryan Williams goes down or something and he profiles as the number one target again, maybe then we have to see. He's a hell of a wide receiver, Chris. I do like him. He's a lot bigger than I remembered seeing him last season. Obviously, he has a great connection with Ty Simpson. That week one, he had like 12 targets. He hasn't had as many targets in the next few games, but he's obviously been a go-to guy for Ty Simpson when things break down or when they just need to move the chain. So he does a lot of things really well, and I think he's going to provide value for your dynasty rosters, and he's going to provide value for an NFL team. I hesitate to spend a first round pick on him, but I don't hate it. But moving on, because we're running out of time here, let's move on to my pick at 111 here. I took another quarterback, and I usually don't take this many quarterbacks, but man, this is a guy that
Got to catch them all.
I was pretty critical. I struggled with this one because I already had this notion of who Carson Beck was in my mind. And look, Miami did it again, Chris. Last season, obviously, they had Cam Ward come in through the transfer portal, and they turned him into the number one overall pick. I don't know if he's the number one overall pick, but I think he's playing his way into the first round with what he's done. 972 yards on the season, 7 touchdowns. He had 3 big-time throws in this last game. Look, he's got a great offensive line and some really good weapons in CJ Daniels, the freshman phenom Malachi Toney. He's looking confident. I talked about this with Chev on Sunday on our college football recap show. He's just looking confident. And when he was there his last year in Georgia, he wasn't. You could tell he struggled with the wide receivers dropping. Obviously, he was injured. There was some shaky line play too. He just didn't look confident. And right now he's seeing it. He's gripping it and he's ripping it. And I love to see that. So good job on the kid. Like I'm rooting for him. I love to see these guys bounce back, especially when the entire community writes you off. So I'm looking forward to see how he ends the season. Did you have any thoughts on him before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, props to Miami. They're definitely a school to watch at this point because they're going to be in a position again to maybe take another running back in the transfer portal, and we'll see what they could do with them next year, right? So it's a nice little quarterback factory they've turned into right now, and he's really done a great job of revitalizing his overall value right now in Devy communities and in the dynasty world, and for himself in the NFL draft. So I think that there's a high likelihood that an NFL team is going to want to take a fairly early pick on him. Maybe, as we mentioned with LaNorris, as somebody to sit for a year or two just to learn a little bit. But depending on how the rest of his season goes, he has a chance to climb even further up this board because right now it's fairly wide open. We don't know who the number one quarterback is going to be taken at this point. Right. So if he keeps pumping them out, man, he's going to raise the stock even more. Great pick at 111.
So before we move on to our final pick, you talked about Miami like becoming this haven for quarterbacks to revitalize and rejuvenate their careers, right? So I'm projecting forward, Chris, because obviously they're going to have a need next year. Do you think it's possible if Billy Napier gets fired? Do you think we could see DJ Lagway transfer to Miami?
That would certainly be interesting. I think Napier's probably getting fired, so that would be a fun one, man. He doesn't have to travel too far, right? He just goes a little further south, so that would be great. That
would be crazy. I would love to see that just for the chaos.
That would be great. Yeah, that would piss off a lot of Florida fans for sure.
For sure, man. All right, last pick.
And I couldn't let my boy Nick Singleton slip away from the first round.
You're so biased.
I am a little bit biased, but we both had him as our RB2 coming into this season, and so far the stats just haven't been there. In fact, he doesn't even look like the best running back in his own backfield. Katron's been much better of a running back so far this season for Penn State, but much like a couple of these other guys, including Jeremiah Love, the stats aren't necessarily all that matters, especially when it comes to NFL talent. We know that he would have been one of the higher ranked running backs in the 2025 NFL draft class. He would have been a first round pick in dynasties if he had come out last year. Right now, I've alluded to it before. I'm not entirely sure what the heck's going on with the Penn State offense, but as they get into some of these dirtier games against the Big Ten, I expect them to utilize Katron and Nick all over the field. So we'll see what his final stat line is going to look like at the end of the year. But he still has that dynamic ability out of the backfield. He does have some nice pass catching upside. We talked about him running wide receiver routes in the past since they had nobody else. I couldn't let him fall out of the first round because I think by the time that spring comes around next year, he's certainly going to be a first round dynasty pick. It's just for the premise of this show, he could have fallen. And I was torn there. I was not even sure that I wanted to take him at 112. But I think when you're talking about the overall upside of a player to take at the end round, he's got to be the guy, right? Because we could be looking at this in a couple months and saying, what the heck did we do letting him fall all the way to 112?
Right.
So happy to take him there. Looking forward to him playing for my boys. Definitely a little bit of bias. You and I are the polar opposite on that. You're trying to actively not be biased for USC, and I'm just like, whatever. I love Penn State. Let's go. Hammer them all.
I can't fault you for it, Chris. We both love Nick Singleton, and I think at 112, you're really buying into the pedigree, right? You're buying into the pedigree of this back with the elite speed. We already know he has a laser confirmed 4.340. He's another guy that can create spike weeks on a single touch. And I think, like you said, if he puts together statement games against Big Ten competition, you're only going to see his stock rebound quickly. And I think, like you said, this slide could end up looking like highway robbery. But I think more notably than Nick Singleton are the other names that we left out, right? We talked for a long time about the strength of 2026 being the quarterbacks, and some of those quarterbacks that we anticipated being at the top in Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier, they're not even in our first round currently because of their bad play on the season, especially Cade Klubnik, man. What is just a meteoric fall for that guy. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, obviously, I've seen pockets of good enough play for him. I don't know what's going on with their offense right now. They don't have any real semblance of a true consistent running game still, and they're not having Nussmeier attack the seams vertically like he did last season. It's a lot of stuff around the line of scrimmage, short game, quick, and maybe that's because of their 4 new offensive linemen. Maybe they're having to get the ball out. I haven't really delved too deeply into the numbers or the film yet on that, but from what I've seen, man, it's like they've neutered the offense right now. So I'm hoping that they ramp that back up and we can at least see Nussmeier project his way back up. I've given up on Klubnik, man, and that hurts. As a big proponent of Klubnik in the offseason, dude's just totally regressed, man. He looks like he doesn't have it. I don't know what he's doing out there, but not in our first round. I wouldn't even take him in the second round currently.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel validated. I didn't put him in our quarterback belt tiers early in the offseason, and thankfully I didn't. So because he's got to have, other than everybody's buzz about Arch, Cade's the one that's fallen by far. His star is not shining anymore. But yeah, a couple other Nittany Lions that you might expect have been seen, Drew Aller and Katron, because he is rising. I think Katron's going to entrench himself firmly as a second round dynasty pick in the upcoming draft class because of his production so far. But yeah, obviously neither of them made the cut. Obviously Klubnik and Nussmeier. Zachariah Branch has looked fairly decent. He's not in there. CJ Baxter, we've had some health issues with him. He's kind of playing behind Trey Weissner right now. Some of these guys, Antonio Williams, I don't know what the heck. It's probably just all Cade Klubnik, but he's really fallen. Too. Yeah, he's really fallen. Wesco seems to be like the only one that you really are happy to own at this point as a Devy asset from the wide receiver core there. Darius Taylor is another one that we like, who hasn't quite had the production yet this year. So yeah, it was fun to do this for sure, man. I love taking a look ahead because that's what we're always projecting to do, right? This is a fun way to be a little bit more pizzazz on the risers and fallers, right? What could we anticipate if we had to draft right now? And I do enjoy those leagues where you do the draft for your dynasty league before the NFL draft. So in those kind of leagues, you definitely want to be thinking about these kind of things right now in September, because you're looking at talent, you're looking at what people might be thinking, and obviously a lot of season left to be played, but this was a fun way to do it. So this is a good idea.
For sure. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, but that's going to wrap it up for this one. Our first round Superflex Dynasty rookie mock. through today's lens. But now it's your turn. If rookie drafts started today, I want to know who's your rookie 101. Drop it in the comments. Just let us know whether you agree, whether you disagree, and who you think we left off the board and who should be there. So if you've been rocking with the dojo, again, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the content wherever you get your podcast, and anything that you need to do to sharpen your game, right? For Chris, the Shifu, I'm the Devy Sensei. Until next time, keep training, keep grinding, and we're going to see you back in the dojo.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access